Yeah.
At least that's a better way to go into it in the mindset. But you're exactly right. I was just having this conversation with a client yesterday who's post divorce, and he was talking about how his son emulates. His son is an infant, just walking and talking, but emulates everything that he does because he's learning. That's how he learned,
Yeah.
watching your parents. I made the point because I have teens now. I said, and it gets even more. I don't want to say important, but it gets in a different way. It becomes even something that's more ingrained in them because then they're watching you to model behavior of how they're going to lead their lives as adults.
Mhm.
And I made the point that to what you said about energy, I said, I know I have learned, I didn't know, but I have learned that even if I wake up in the morning and my energy is off, the whole household's energy becomes off. And then like if stuff becomes key, I got to stop. I got to be like, well, like, how am I showing up here? Because
Yeah.
something's off here. And it doesn't mean every time, I've got teen girls. So there is some responsibility there around teen girls and their drama. But anyway, I've got to pay attention to that
Yeah.
because it has an impact on them. And so that's why when I'm doing the divorced dad coaching with them, taking care of themselves, and this is a good
Yeah.
message for any mom or dad, taking
Yeah.
care of yourself is the primary thing that you need to do through this process, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. Have yourself grounded in a good position. That's hard for us because we think that that's selfish and that we're not putting the kids first, but think of it from their perspective. When they grow up, you're going to want them to do that. So if you're not, all you're doing is modeling a poor behavior. So
Yeah.
taking care of that, and then you've got the energy to deal with whatever it might be, whether it's a toddler and tantrums or it's a teen and drama, whatever. You've got
Yeah.
the energy and you're in a good place and a foundation to deal with that. So
Yeah,
yeah.
man. You gotta put your oxygen mask on first, right?
Yep, absolutely.
I was there was something you said earlier about the kids.
Well, the impact,
Yeah.
what you said about the impact on the kids is it's just they're going to go through this is going to have an impact on the kids. And so I guess the point I want to make is if you can work on the relationship, you can figure it out, that is going to be the best possible way. There are all kinds of studies and research that shows if a family stays intact, there's two parents that are there in the house, that is the best possible situation for the
Yeah.
children, because there's so much of particularly intersexual and relational dynamics that go on that they need to learn and understand, that I didn't, because my parents were divorced, how to have a relationship with somebody else. And if you don't have that as a model in the home, then that's something that if you don't, like, I try really hard with my daughters to talk about that, but I'm only talking about it, right? I'm not with somebody that I can model that or they see every day in an intact,
Mhm.
traditional family. And so,
Mhm.
but here's the flip side to that, because I don't want single parents out there, dads or moms, to feel guilty about this. There are things that they're going to learn through this that they could only learn through going through this difficult and challenging process. So
Yeah.
it's not a lost cause, but if you can, it's the best case scenario to stay in that.
Yeah.
And his pie in the sky, idea about, oh, it's not going to, it's not, it's going to be different.
Yeah.
But there are different things that they can learn. And hopefully if they're both conscientious and aware and pay attention, that they can mitigate some of it, but it's going to create challenges for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the issues that I see is that people just see divorce as an actual, like it's a real option before even things get to that point. It's kind of this easy back door, and so what I hear a lot of people go is, well, either we stay together and we fight or we get divorced. And for some strange reason, that's the only two options people can see. Like, really? Have you thought about this other thing called, maybe getting some help?
Right.
I just find it
Communication skills.
yeah, learning how to
Something.
communicate. Yeah, like it just boggles my mind that people think that those are the only two options there are, and that they would rather go and spend tens of thousands of dollars and spend all these hundreds of hours in court proceedings and throw money at a lawyer than actually do the work and be
Well,
vulnerable. And I
can
get
we
vulnerability is not easy, but man, we're in this culture of just, immediate gratification. I just want the pain to go away. Then actually really going, okay, well, what is it about me that I'm
yeah.
in a situation?
Can we talk about that for a second? Because I think
Yeah.
that's a huge point that you just made about the doing the work and about the communication. And we've normalized divorce as an option. And that's the sad thing about our society. It's just become normalized. It's just like, oh, okay. And there are huge impacts. We're not talking about the impacts. We're not talking about what it's doing to society. We just have normalized it, and we're like, okay, now how do we deal with it? Which is so wrong. But that's a whole nother podcast episode. But what you're talking about with the communication, because if you could, and I know you do this because I've been able to personally do work with you, but if you can hire somebody like a Janelle or a coach to work on that, no matter what else is going on, if you have an effective way that you can communicate what it is. So whether it is an unhealthy relational dynamic, it's going to be tied to something, and you're going to have triggers that come up. If you're doing one of two things, understanding that something's going to come up and being aware of it, and then effectively communicating, there's nothing that you can't get through in this. And so spending the few thousands of dollars to work with a Janelle or a coach in order to learn that skill. And I would say that would be like the one primary skill. That's what they like. Divorce prep should be just all about communication.
Yeah.
Just how to communicate, because you're never going to be the same person. You're going to always have triggers and emotions that come up. It happens over time. There's no end, there's no end zone, right? You're not going to just finally get to maritable or relational bliss, and you've hit scored the touchdown,
and top of the mountain,
and that's it, and you're done, right? I've climbed it, and we're just gonna float around in the clouds together forever, right? It's never going to happen. Yeah. You're going to it's always, because life's going to come up, and you're going to have challenges, you're going to have sickness. If you can learn that communication and how to work through that, then if the triggers come up, or the childhood trauma, or whatever comes up that you got to deal with, you have a way in which to do it. And that is, like what you said, that's so huge.
Yeah, it's so true, because thinking about my own divorce, I really realized that it was all my stuff that I was dealing. Yeah, he was doing his thing and I was very upset about it, but it was all my triggers being, rattled. And so here's what I would like to say to the people out there that are considering divorce is that you got to start with us. We got to start with us. If we are not happy with ourselves, we don't love ourselves, we have no self-worth. We have no confidence. There's a lot of us that have if you can imagine, I have some pretty deep, vulnerable conversations with my clients. And a lot of them are men who have never cried in front of anyone before.
Yep.
And I feel so privileged to be that space, not only for women, but for men too. And when we go to that deep place, we're all the same, Jude. We all want to be loved. We all want to be accepted.
Right.
We all want to belong.
Yeah.
But deep down inside of us, we are, our egos are fragile. We all have fear. And unless we're willing to love that part of us, to own that part of us, to have compassion for ourselves and what we have done and haven't done in life, to be able to forgive ourselves, again, for what we have done and what we haven't done. That's where the healing starts. Because so many people say to me, well, Janelle, why can't I forgive my husband? Why can't I let go of this resentment? And my first question is, what is it about you that you haven't forgiven yourself for?
Right.
This is usually where the tears come, because they know exactly what I'm talking about.
Right.
And so I say, how can you be happy in a relationship with someone else when the most important relationship is with yourself and you haven't taken care of that? You haven't loved that person. So therefore, how can you be in love with somebody else? And so that's why the work starts here. And I tell people, listen, I don't know what the future holds, but what my promise is as your coach is we're going to work together so that no matter what happens in your life, kind of what you were saying earlier, right? even if a tornado comes and tries to rip you out of the ground, you are solid. And
Yeah.
my goal is to have you be so emotionally resilient that whatever life throws at you, you have the skill set to be able to deal with that in a really empowering way and spend less time in that dark, icky place and more time up in this high vibe possibility arena, because that's where life really thrives. Is because this is love up here,
Right.
down here, this is called fear. And this is
Yeah.
where most of us spend our time resisting, avoiding, focusing what we don't want. And yet, when I ask people, okay, well, I'm clear that you know what you don't want. You don't want this. You don't want to fight. You don't want to, you don't want to be lonely. You don't, whatever, right? All these things they don't want. But when I say, well, what is it that you do want?
Right.
Nobody can ever answer that question. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, I haven't thought about it. It was like, yeah.
Well,
No
that's
wonder.
right. Well, they're standing in the forest, right? And they can't stand far enough back to see what's behind it. It could be a beautiful sunset or mountains or a waterfall, but you're standing too close, so they don't know that yet. I love what you said about I love what you said about love, because that's the same thing that I'll talk about with clients too, which is you will only be loved to the capacity that you can love yourself.
Absolutely.
So if if you love yourself a little bit, that's as much love that anybody's ever going to be able to get into you, right? It's not even give you, because they may have a much higher capacity to give you, but you're only going to be able to accept as much as you love yourself, right? Yeah, exactly. Because you're blocking, or you're too close to those trees, or whatever. You're not positioned to where you can accept more. And so somebody might have a massive amount of love to be able to give to you, but you just can't accept it because you can't even love yourself that much. And that's a misconception with men in particular in divorces, is that this is easy for them. I would venture to say it's even harder for them, because it's devastating. It's devastating on so many different levels for men, because it's difficult to get into that vulnerability, to get into that understanding of self-love. And that's not something that we are taught. It's not something that we delve into. It's not really something even our mothers have helped us to work through and process. And so that it becomes very difficult, because then all of what we've designed, and so I'm speaking from experience again, and of all of what we've designed in our life is what we think it was supposed to be like, right? And you mentioned that too, about what you wanted in your marriage. And then when that goes away, we're devastated. And then because we did get served, usually we are like, oh, like I didn't even know this, or I didn't understand this, or didn't. So I guess the second part to what you're saying is also have compassion for the other person all the time, because you have no idea what it is that they are or not going through, or didn't know, or whatever. And that gets back to that communication. If you can get yourself vulnerable enough to say, well, what is it, or how is it, or how can we work through this, or give me your perspective. It might take a lot of work, because once you, like you said, once you get to a point, they'll break down. And then if you can open that and create a safe place for that back and forth, then it can be really beautiful, and it can be foundational to building that relationship up in a phenomenal manner.
I love what you said, Jude, because I think, and I don't know if this is where you were going, but I'm guessing this is where you were going, is that divorce doesn't have to be this ugly, let's get them for all they're worth, let's hurt them, let's punch them, get them where all the low blows and all these things that we do. And I get it, like in that moment you are so hurt, and you want, there's a part of you that's like, I want them to feel what it feels like to be this hurt, so I'm gonna do everything I can to hurt them financially, emotionally, right, psychologically. And I'm like, but why? Why do we do this? There's this book. I don't know if you've read this book, Jude. It's a great book. It's called Getting the Love You Want. Have you read it?
No, I haven't.
It's such a great book. The thing I want to share about it is, there's this thing we do where we go, if I'm unhappy with you, I'm going to throw a hissy fit, and I'm going to be critical. I'm going to be mean. And maybe if I do that, maybe you'll come back to me. It's this like, when women are unhappy, for example, we'll, say what we say to our partners. the partner feels bad, guilty, shame, whatever it is. And yet we expect that they're going to come back to us more loving. It's just so backwards. Anyway, this book talks about that. And he's like, yeah, why do we do that? I'm like, yeah, why do we do that? And he says, as children, if you think about it, as children, we're infants, we cry when we're unhappy.
Yeah.
Right? Then all of a sudden, here comes this adult who goes, oh, you're in pain. Let me come and sweep you up and make you feel better.
Right.
And now as adults, we're doing that to our partner. We're going, I'm unhappy, me. And then we say really mean things. And then we expect our partner to be like, oh, okay. But no, as you and I both know, we get the opposite effect.
Right.
Like, oh, so you're telling me I'm not good enough. So you're making me, you're judging me, you're criticizing me, whatever. And yet we're so like, huh, how did that happen? And so for me, like, that's a lot of fun with me, like when I work with my clients, and I'm like, so you got mad at your husband and yet you're wondering why he pulled away.
Right.
But I think it's just teaching people. And this is what I'm so passionate about, just teaching people a different way to think about, because society, our culture, our fear, our ego, social media has kind of taught us a kind of screwed up way of relating to each other.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, that's like, yeah, going to war and winning the battle is like the name of the game. Well, I'm going, no, I don't know any marriage where winning the battle did good for anybody. And yeah, maybe you won that fight, but what is the repercussion and the impact of you, really diminishing your partner, not having them feel heard or honored for their part? And then we wonder why we're in the society where we all feel like we're so disconnected from each other.
Well, that's a great, we've got to stop listening to the social cues around this. And I was just reading an article about Tom Brady and Giselle, I'm not sure, Giselle, and
are they getting divorced? Is that what's going on?
Yeah, they're getting divorced. And
okay.
And so, that's the takeaway was, well, there's inequality in marriage. It's like, how do you drive that from what's going on? It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous to be making those comments, and then then it was championing what she's doing, blah blah blah. It's like, you have no freaking idea, and that's completely speculative, and you have no idea. And so I would absolutely agree with, stop listening to all of what this nonsense is, because all it's doing is normalizing it and perpetuating it, and I would say even encouraging it.
Yeah.
And I think on the women, we get this a lot on the female side, which is just go or divorce and and it's like, no, that should be like the last resort of like, you've done everything possible, and sometimes people think they have, but they really haven't.
But they haven't.
It like the absolute last straw. And the other thing I wanted to say about what you said was perfect, because that's exactly the example, or a great example of what I was saying and encouraging about the communication, right? If you take that example of what you're talking about in getting your needs met or not getting your needs met, right, as a child. So maybe you were like me, where I didn't, and then getting my needs met meant having to like make somebody happy. And then so I was trying to make somebody happy that got their needs met all the time, and they were always crying. And so that was that unhealthy relational dynamic, because we find what we're used to and what's comfortable to us. And so then that becomes the dynamic. But if you are able to take that time and have that communication that we're talking about, then you talking about like what your childhood was, and obviously if you can do that with the person outside of therapy, that's pretty amazing. But typically this is probably going to happen in therapy or coaching or whatever environment that's going to help you facilitate that communication, because otherwise it can get like a mess. But that's a perfect example. So then that's an unhealthy dynamic that then if you communicate, then you have more empathy. Like, oh man, Janelle, I didn't know that was what your childhood was like. And I didn't know that's how you felt, that, I just need something from you, or I need something in our relationship. And this is what I need. And it's what I've been trying to do in order to do that. And when I didn't get it, I pull away, right? That's where that communication comes in. And then you start seeing, oh, well, we have these common values. We want the same thing. We want
Mhm.
happiness and we want to do this and we believe the same things and how to do it. We just haven't figured out how to get there. So that's a great
Yes.
example, right?
Yes.
Of of communicating around it and not listening to the, well, it was inequality of the relationship and yeah, he should be doing that more, he shouldn't be pulling away. Well, you don't know that. Maybe he should be, because that probably protected him in his childhood, or it probably protected her in her childhood, or whatever abuse or whatever else it was. So yeah, of course they're going to be doing that because that's what helped them survive till now. So
Yeah.